You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast, Episode 5.
One thing that we all share is that everyone feels that they are special somehow. Everyone feels that they're special. And that goes, little children feel that, very old adults feel that. Everybody at the heart of themselves would tell you that they feel special, that they feel different, that they feel unique.
You're listening to the Life Purpose Advisor Podcast.
Life purpose, spirituality, higher calling, personal growth, meaningful life.
We ask the deep questions about living a balanced life of meaning, purpose, and joy.
Passion, know thyself, be mindful, spiritual practice, aha moments, life lessons, balance.
It is time to welcome your host, Angie Swartz.
Today, I am honored and humbled to welcome one of my favorite people to the show. Dr. Alice Bandy has been leading transformative classes for adults since 1996. Her creative style of teaching offers students experiences of personal empowerment designed to reveal the inherent greatness within each individual. She is the spiritual director of the Heart of Teaching Incorporated. Hello, Alice. Welcome to the show.
Hello, Angie. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. I'm really looking forward to having a conversation with you about life purpose.
Yeah, me too.
Tell us a little bit about the Heart of Teaching Incorporated.
Well, the Heart of Teaching is an educational incorporated nonprofit organization, and its main purpose, its sole purpose, I should say, is to offer spiritual classwork, spiritual materials, and spiritual resources for spiritual teachers. I call it the Heart of Teaching because that's part of my style of teaching, is to teach through the open heart. And my dream for this organization and for this teaching chapter that I run is to gather in a community of spiritual teachers that we might have a conversation about what it really means to be a spiritual teacher in this world, and also to support those who are doing this work. We're just really getting started with the website right now. I've been working on it for a long time, but it's going to offer curriculum, it's going to offer resources, inspiration, class ideas, books, all kinds of things for those doing this type of work in the world.
Very, very, very exciting. I'm looking at a copy of one of your books, The Heart of Adult Learning, Ideas, Exercises, and Tools for Helping Your Students Grow. I assume is this book available for purchase?
Yes, it is. It's available on Amazon right now. Mm-hmm.
Great. So let's just look at this just a little bit. A creative, practical, inspiring guide for transforming the average teacher into a master teacher of adult education. Adult students have already completed their formal education, returned to the class to grow, to learn new skills, to better understand themselves, and accomplish their goals. They thrive in a class that is a supportive community where shared insights and participative learning not only expand their minds but transform their lives. Wow, who wouldn't want to do that?
Well, it's a lot of work for a teacher, I can tell you that.
I would imagine it's a lot of work for a student as well sometimes. This is deep work.
It makes teaching and being a student actually fun. I just completed a course recently with a 25 people, a group of teachers, and most of the time was spent laughing and having fun and being creative. I mean, that's the whole thing about adult education. One woman said to me, I've been a teacher of children for a long time, and I think it's fun to be so creative in the classroom, but I never thought about adult education as being fun and creative, and that's really what I'm trying to teach here, and that's what this book is all about.
So it's okay for adults to have fun as well.
I think so, yes. Don't you?
I do. I think so, for sure.
Good.
You sound like a pretty fun person, and I actually have known Alice for about 5 years. I know she likes to have a lot of fun in her life. What's your favorite thing to do for fun, Alice? There's some favorite things.
I love the out of doors. I think nature is a wonderful teacher, and really since I was a really small child, I've spent a lot of time walking out of doors pretty much every day. I like to do that in a solitary way, really, just to gather in the beauty of that. I love to go to movies. I'm on Facebook. I do regular reviews of movies on Facebook just for fun because I enjoy movies so much. I think there's such a peak inside of our culture, and they're also really a creative medium that can be so stimulating to think about in terms of our lives. I love music. I have symphony tickets. I'm a subscriber to the symphony, and I like to go to all kinds of concerts, that sort of thing. And I also just like to have a nice meal with friends. I mean, I think it's really fun to just spend an evening with people that you love and enjoy each other's company.
That all sounds wonderful. Maybe we should be doing this over a dinner together, but here we are. Can I ask you about your life purpose? Do you have a purpose? Do you know what it is? How long have you known?
You know, life purpose is an interesting thing to talk about. I can remember when I was very young, I was wondering about it. And when I turned 21, you know, the grand old age of 21, I actually locked myself in my living room for an entire weekend and was not going to come out until I decided what my life purpose was going to be. I didn't find it out at that age, by the way, but I had to come out eventually, so it only lasted one weekend. But what I've discovered since I was young is that I think that when we're looking for life purpose, I think it's very easy to look outside of ourselves. And I've had myself, I think now, 5 careers, and when I went into each one of these, that question sat with me a little bit. I wondered if this was my purpose, if this was my purpose, if this was my purpose. But at some point in that time, I discovered that to look outside yourself for your purpose, I don't think is the answer. At least it wasn't for me. It's not the answer to try to be something or do something in the world. I think it's more about the inner journey and how that plays out. That's more where I look for my life purpose.
And what do you mean by that, by the inner journey?
For myself, I'm an extremely creative person, and so I know creativity is part of my inner journey. I also know that one of my skills, one of my loves, one of my talents is to create opportunities for other people to become more in touch with who they really are, in touch with their own empowerment. And so I sort of, in my own mind, put those together. And if you were to ask me, I guess I would say that what I do is I create opportunities for other people to become empowered to be their own really magnificent selves. That's what I do.
That's beautiful. And so that inner journey that they're working on, is it all about self-development work, understanding who they are?
Well, it can be, and some people like to think of it that way, but I think it's more about expression than, at least that's where I go with that idea. I think it's more about creative expression. It's about expressing one's individual unique talents, unique attitudes, unique abilities, unique loves. I think what we're really about in terms of purpose here is to be the fully orbed beings that we are. And so, yes, there's a certain amount of self-development learning and understanding of yourself. That's certainly been an ancient path that a lot of people have walked. But you can also do it without doing that. You can also do it just by letting go of old boundaries and old inhibitions and old ways of trying to be somebody other than who you are. Because I think the truth of who we are is that we're really these wonderful spiritual beings, and if you can, anyone, if I can, or anyone can start to just put their emphasis on being exactly who they are, then I think they immediately move to their purpose.
Mm-hmm. It would be interesting to know what percentage of our population desires to do that or endeavors to do that. It's probably a small one.
I don't know. I think a lot of people wonder about this. I think little kids wonder about it. I think it's more common than we might think. I think that a lot of people in the back of their minds, they wonder what I'm here for. One thing I know, because I do a lot of counseling, which has been a great teacher to me to do all this counseling with people, and I found that one thing that we all share is that everyone feels that they are special somehow. Everyone feels that they're special. And that goes, little children feel that, very old adults feel that. Everybody at the heart of themselves would tell you that they feel special, that they feel different, that they feel unique. And I found that to be a wonderful tool when working with people, because if I can help them find their specialness, that really takes them where they want to go in terms of purpose.
Mm-hmm. Very big gift.
Mm-hmm.
Big gift.
Yeah.
Just delightful. Let's go back to you for a minute and talk about these 5 careers that you had or have had. Do you think that there were hints at where you were going? Do you think they were all building towards where you are today?
I do. We have a saying in spiritual work where it's like peeling the onion, or how does that go? The layers of the onion. I don't know. I don't like the onion metaphor so much myself, so I don't know if I like that idea so much, but it does feel like layers. I always wanted to work. My father was somewhat of a workaholic, and his life looked a lot more interesting than my mom's. When it came to planning my own life, I always had my eye on a career from the beginning because I did not want to sit around the house like my mom did. Initially, I was really attracted to the publishing world, and I just went with my heart and loved everything about it. I loved the color of it. I loved the feeling of the paper. I loved the uniqueness of it. I loved the artistic side of it. I just loved it. And I think in everything that I've done, I've moved more and more into areas that my heart was calling me into. So that is what I believe is the thread. I mean, once I got into publishing, then I got interested in touching out to people's lives, and I moved into marketing, and that was really interesting for me. And then after that, I moved into consulting with marketing with great big organizations and got interested in how they were running those things. And then I got interested in trying to manage an organization. And so it felt a lot like stair steps to me of moving deeper and deeper into where my interest was going. And fortunately, I think it led me now eventually into my spiritual work, which I now know at this end of the game here of the looking back over all of that, I know that I now know how to do my marketing. I know how to manage an organization. I know how to work with, creative things and color and all those different things I learned along the way. I can bring those, I kind of gather them up like a big basket of tools I can bring to the work I'm doing now. So I definitely think that thread was always there.
For all the people that might be listening, do you think that's true for everyone? Like they could go look at their own lives and see what those stair steps have been along the way so far?
I do. In fact, I think I wanted to recommend on this conversation with you, I wanted to recommend a book by Parker Palmer called Let Your Life Speak. It's a really wonderful book, and he does in that book exactly what I'm talking about. He has you turn around and look at your life and see what your life is telling you. I think one of his quotes is, this isn't exactly the wording, but it's something like, it's hard to decide what to do with your life until your life tells you what it wants to do. It's the idea of looking at where you've been and what you've gathered along the way and starting to paint a new picture of yourself, if you would, according to your history, your abilities, your experience, your loves, your dislikes, and let your life teach you where you're going. It's a nice idea, I think.
A great book recommendation. It's interesting to me. I believe in that same theory in the work that I do around life purpose. And it's always interesting how people have lots of hints around them, but they've kind of discarded them or forgotten things that have come to their attention in the past until they really start to sit down and deliberately look at, as you say, and Parker Palmer says, what's your life teaching you? Because it is teaching us every day. And it's a big blessing for someone to have that light bulb. Oh, there is a theme in my life.
I think so, yeah.
I do too.
And I also want to say that I think we're speaking now of adult life, but it's really important. I like if those of us who are listening to this have children, I think it's really important with children to be able to do that. In fact, I often counsel parents to help their children find their way that way, so that if a child, as an example, even a small child, does something at school that allows them to organize other people or allows them to be kind to other people or whatever, the parent has the opportunity to say to them, gosh, that's really interesting, Jimmy. Look, you're a leader, or look at how kind you are to other people, or let's pay attention to how much you like doing creative work, or those kinds of things. They're little hints that the parent can drop as they observe the child, and so then when the child gets to be our age, they're not wondering so hard what they're supposed to be doing because they've had that little bit of input from the parent along the way.
Mm-hmm. They're not so buried in expectations of what somebody else wants for their lives versus what they want for their own. So some of the folks that I've interviewed on this show, they've talked about things that happen in their life that are more difficult, that they feel have pointed them in the direction towards where they're supposed to be going. Have you experienced any tragedy in your life or very difficult times that you care to share?
Oh, no, my life has been a bed of roses. No, just kidding. But has anybody not had difficult times? I don't know. I've had plenty of difficult times. Let's see. You mean they're related to the purpose? Is that what you're trying to get?
Right.
Yeah.
Things that happened in your life that maybe, in your words, were like a bumper car, that pushed you in a different direction.
Well, I had a difficult childhood, and I know that was very formative for me. It seems now like all we talk about is our childhood, and I get tired of doing that. It's easy to blame everything on our childhood. But I had a very strong and controlling father, and also, he was prone to raging and so on. And it wasn't fun living under those circumstances. He could be very fun, but he could also really be trouble, and you had to watch out for him because he would really strike out. And I think that having gone through that experience at a very tender age, and I think many of us do go through these hard experiences at a tender age, that I think it definitely opened my heart with compassion for my mom and for my siblings who also had to put up with this. But it also, it made me interested in some of the work that I do now. It made me interested in how it is to be of service to other people rather than trying to control them, of how to be patient with people instead of trying to judge them or punish them or whatever. And I think I learned a lot at the hand of my father about some of the things I learned, but I didn't learn it the good way. I learned it the opposite way, if you would. And I can remember when I was in high school, when we get into those ages where girls can be really mean to other girls in high school, about cliques and all that stuff. And I had one really good friend who got real cliquish with some other girls and started being mean to me and making fun of me. And, kids can do that with each other. And I remember I made a decision at that age. I thought to myself, well, I have a choice. I can either love this girl or I can not love this girl, because I really loved her. She was like one of my best friends. And so I just decided to love her regardless of what she was doing now, because at some back of my mind, I knew it was sort of a teenage thing I was going through. And I was able to do that with her because I had decided the same thing about my father. I decided, well, I can either love him or not. And I decided to love him despite the way he had handled us when we were young. And so these lessons come along in painful ways, but they also offer you tremendous gifts. And I think, especially now in the kind of work I do, it's very hard for me to not love somebody. It's, that's my first go-to position with people. And I think as I go on with my work, I think it's really an essential part of what I do. So, I don't know, that's just one example, but I have many of these kinds of things, And
I think that's very true about you. I've seen you illustrate that with many people. That is the first place that Alice comes from, is love. And I think people really feel that from you, and they might not feel that other places in their life. So what a good path to choose to be on, to offer to others. You talked about your spiritual work and your spiritual counseling. So can I ask you, what are your spiritual beliefs?
Yes. I think, I've studied everything as far as I know. I'm sure I have a few things yet to study, but I've studied all the major religions. I've studied a lot of different philosophical paths. I've studied a lot of New Age things. I've studied a lot of indigenous rituals and systems and so on. And I was thinking last night, actually, one of the things about getting older is you have time to study all these things, because when I was younger, I thought, how am I ever going to learn all this stuff? And all of a sudden, I feel like all of a sudden I've learned a lot of things that I wanted to. But anyway, out of all of that, I feel like I've arrived at some really basic principles that work for me, and I pretty much live by them. One of them is that I believe that we're all here on a specific path, that each of us is an individual, and that we have individual talents that we bring to this world, individual talents that we bring to whatever world we live in. And that's all by a divine design. I mean, I think one of the most interesting things about life is that just the way things happen in life and just the way things play out, it's very hard to imagine that there isn't some amazing intellect behind all of this. I mean, just if by the time you spend time with your own breath and the beat of your heart and the way the stars hang in the sky and all of those things, this is way past human understanding, and I believe there is a basic divine energy at the very source of all life that has a perfect pattern for life, shall we say. And so I think that pattern extends to people as well. So I believe that the things that we do in our lives, whether someone might judge them right or wrong, I think we all do it because it's part of a path that we're on and we're all attempting to advance. I sometimes hear people say, oh, I went backward again, I went backward. I don't think we can go backward. I don't think that's the natural flow of life. I've been really interested in reading a lot of Stephen Hawking and some of these other scientists, and they'll explain to you very clearly that that's not really possible. Everything moves forward. Things don't really move backward, just like the plants grow, we grow, and you can't really go back into the seed at any point in time. So I really believe that we're all evolving towards higher and higher good, and that when I'm working with people, I very much see that path for them as well and try and help them understand that about themselves. And I do believe that we are, as science will explain to you, I don't think that we ever end. I think the life force that we are goes on and on and on. So I think we're kind of on a way station here. I saw Interstellar movie recently. It talks a lot about that, about Earth being just a way station. And I think that's a little bit what I think, too, about where we are. We're stopping through here to have these experiences with each other, but I believe we're moving on after this.
Isn't it so interesting this time that we're alive? Like, you're talking about Interstellar. I just saw the movie about the theory of everything with Stephen Hawking. Like, things are mainstream with maybe we didn't see 30 years ago.
Well, we're evolving, The consciousness is and the knowledge base is. Everything's evolving,
An exciting time to be alive.
Very exciting. And I'm really excited, I have to just say, about all the technology. That's one of my big loves. And I think it's just fantastic, and it is changing our world so much, and I'm just thrilled with it. I always think of the Internet as a huge bed of consciousness. It's just amazing that we can reach out to each other through this invisible realm and touch around the world. I don't know. I think it's kind of a miracle myself. I'm all thrilled about that, too.
What's your favorite? What do you love? What are your favorite things about technology?
Well, I love that I can blog with the President of the United States as an example. I love that. And I do occasionally.
You give him some counseling once in a while.
I'll give him a little advice. And and that I can email Bill Gates and give him a few ideas if I want to, and that sort of thing, Well, it does, and I love it when they do when they're doing elections and you can log in with CNN and say something about what they're doing. I mean, it opens up the voice of the population in an amazing way. And on one hand, I think that's fantastic because it's such a leveling thing. It's not like just the power people can say things now. Just when we've seen some of the revolutions in the Middle East and that sort of thing, they're all driven through the technology. It's thrilling, I think. And then on the other hand, I think it's also very connecting. I'm part of an artistic group on Facebook of people all over the world, and we share the artwork that we do online with each other, and all these different languages and all these different time zones and all these different cultures, and everybody discussing each other's art. I mean, I don't know. When I was a child, that wasn't even a possibility. It wasn't even a gleam in my eye, and here I am doing it. I think it's thrilling.
Lots of research out there about what a contributing factor technology was to President Obama being in office. It might not have been possible without the technology and the connections that you're discussing. But I have to ask you one fun thing. So how many times has President Obama or Bill Gates written to give you some advice?
Never.
Not yet. That's pending.
That's pending. Probably after they hear this podcast.
That's right. I'm sure that's true. Do you think that someone out there that's listening that is not on a spiritual path or doesn't believe that the world is connected in the way that you're discussing, do you think they're also on this path that you're discussing and that they're working towards their purpose or something, or talents, to use your words?
I do.
Does it matter? Let's say an atheist does it matter what their beliefs are?
No. It doesn't.
They get it anyway.
Nobody on this earth is just made out of mud. I just don't think so. I think we all have a body, mind, and spirit. I believe that. And just because of that, we're all part of on the evolution of our own spirits. We just are. And so some people are in different zones about that and different stages of it, but everybody's doing it.
Would you have any advice for someone that's out there listening that has been living their life as an atheist but is curious about taking a step towards learning something bigger?
Well, we're in great advantage in these days because, and I have a few friends who are atheists, I have a few friends who are pagans, I have a few friends who don't think there's a God. I think part of the problem is that in our history we've had so much separation about the idea of a divine being that sort of sits in the sky like in the days of Moses and has that form outside the earth kind of an idea. And I know a lot of people who really are tired of that idea and want to find something that has a little bit more meaning for them closer to home, because they don't really believe that anymore. They don't believe somebody is sitting up there watching out over us and that sort of thing. But the nice thing about where we are, again, in our culture is that science has come along and is really the new religion now. And so I think that for anybody who doesn't want to embrace any particular philosophy or go to any church or have any of those things in their life, I think a lot of those people are looking at science and are listening to it. I know that psychology, I often say, is the religion of our age, because it's pretty commonly believed that if somebody has some emotional issues that a psychologist can help them. And really, that goes back to Plato. I mean, as the ancient times, Plato would say, if you're going to help somebody, you can't just help their body, you have to also help their mind. And that's straight up psychology. So I think we have lots of avenues for it, but it's all heading toward the same place. And that is the truth of the inner being. Everybody knows, no matter what they believe, everybody knows they have an inner being. Everybody knows that. They also all know they have feelings on the inside. They all know they have a unique perspective. They all know that they sometimes have intuitions about things. Everybody knows that, and some of us call it spiritual and some of us don't.
Do you think we'll arrive at this major knowingness in our lifetimes?
No, I don't.
Right. Interesting. Well, we'll have fun trying to get there for sure.
I'd like to think that in our life we're going to do this, in our life we're going to do that. I don't really believe that. I've been through too much organizational life, and I know that once we think we're getting somewhere, then people want to reinvent it and start over on something else. And it's just the nature of the game that people like to have a challenge and they like to figure things out. And I frankly don't think we really want the definite answers on these things. I think we still all want to figure it out,
Part of the fun of it.
Yeah, it's part of the accomplishment,
So you mentioned that you've read everything and studied everything, and this might be going back a little bit for you, but were there tools that were really instrumental for you in understanding who you are and that forever spoken term, know thyself?
Well, I have specific processes that I use. They probably boil down to just a couple of things. Maybe that's what we're talking about now. The biggest thing that I guess that drives my understanding is that everything in the present is fine. And so what we do as beings is we are constantly trying to understand ourselves, trying to learn from ourselves. And so what we do is we take experiences and we take feelings and we take old ideas and we take old relationships that haven't been solved or haven't been balanced in our lives, and we create new situations to balance them. That's what we do. So I think that was the biggest thing I learned that helped me, is to know that when something starts to happen where I get uncomfortable or angry or experience pain or suffering, that it's not coming from the future, it's not coming from the present, it's coming from the past. So I teach a lot of different tools about that, but one of the main things that can help anybody is to separate out the present happening from some old experience that it reminds you of. As well, it's the law of attraction sort of working in a way that doesn't really help us. You're attracting into you opportunities for healing and resolving old issues.
And does that still happen to you?
Of course, yes. Mm-hmm.
But you have a toolkit of things that you go right to. And
I do. Well, I do. For the most part, I do. But just like everybody, I think we're all in the same boat on this thing. It takes you a while to figure out what in the world's the matter. But as the more of this you do, the more you understand. And I also have a little kind of a running dialogue inside of me with my own spirit. And so I'm very teachable. I feel that I have lots to learn myself. And so as things start to happen to me, I just go into my own heart and I ask, what am I learning? Why is this coming? What can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? Those kinds of questions. And those answers are really what guide me.
Do you ever get stuck?
I do. Sure. Yeah.
And why do you think that happens? The reason I'm asking this is someone that's done a lot of work and a lot of research. Why do you think you still get stuck?
Oh, let's see, because I'm still human.
You're still human. I see. You haven't ascended yet.
I'm still here.
Right.
That's right.
And that's part of the human condition. Is that what you're saying?
Well, it's why we're here. I think we come here to change and grow. And when you stop changing and growing, well, what do you need to be here for? There's, this is just purely speculation, of course, but I have an intuition that there are other places where we can live where you don't have to change and grow as much as you do on planet Earth.
Get to move on to the spa life.
That's right.
So
we go to the
nice
angel realm where they just hang around and sing all day,
Sing and do coloring.
Sing and color, that's right. No, they don't color, they just sing. That's a different realm.
Got it. What about our physical bodies? How do they play into living our purpose, growing? Are they just vessels to travel in?
I think your body is a slowed down vibration of your emotions.
And what about, this is a longer conversation, we might have to do another interview for this, but what about when we get sick?
Well, again, I think the body gets sick from emotional overload. By the way, Deepak Chopra teaches this exact thing that I'm talking about now. And he has lots of good books on that if anybody's interested in this topic. Ageless Body, Timeless Mind is one of the greats. And the body is receptacle of emotion, and the illnesses are emotional. Again, that comes from Plato. We learned it how many thousand years ago has this been taught, and we're just still trying to figure it out,
Well, like you said, we don't want to know everything, so we have to do it again.
That's right.
Tell me what you think about synchronicity. You think that life is random?
I hear a lot of people talk about synchronicity, and I know that there's certain people who make a living teaching synchronicity, and I've talked to a lot of friends who've gone to workshops on synchronicities. I actually don't have a strong opinion on that. I don't think life is random. I guess what I would say is I don't put a lot of my attention on synchronicities. I do pay attention when things come around more than once, but I don't go looking for a match on those things necessarily. I don't know. That's still in my thought process, I guess.
Can I ask you about money? I know there's a whole nother interview to talk to you about money because you've written a book on how your money speaks to you. What's the name of that book?
The Wisdom of Money, Listening to the Spiritual Message of Your Finances.
Oh, very good. And that book's available on Amazon.com as well?
Yes,
Great. Well, we'll save that for another time because that's a very rich topic. But I want to ask you about money. So do you make more or less money now where you are in your life? Does it matter? Are your values the same as when you were younger?
Well, I want to make one comment about money before I'll answer that. But I want to make one comment about it, which is I just had a new insight about money that I wanted to share with you. And that is, as I get ready to expand my Heart of Teaching program, I've been looking at what some of the underlying factors are for those doing spiritual work. And I found that this whole situation with money is what we call one of the main pillars of resistance in our society right now. It's an interesting idea because the money thing figures in dominantly in what I'm building right now because so many people are having troubles with money. It seems like such a foreign thing. And you're right, it's a long conversation, but it seems so separate from the rest of life. It just kind of sits out there, money, just like a hard thing to deal with. So it has a lot of importance, I think, and people have to have a spiritual attitude towards it. But for me, it's very interesting. Yes, I've made a huge shift in money as a result of moving into doing my spiritual work. I used to make a lot of money in the corporate world. I can remember it's not like I made millions of dollars, but I made enough money where I never balanced my checkbook. I never looked at my bank account, and I never thought I couldn't buy anything that was in front of me anytime at all. I had a lot of money. So that was a really interesting experience. And I remember people used to call and say, "Are you ever going to deposit that check we sent you?" And I was like, "Oh, when did you send me that?" Because I couldn't keep track of my money. I wasn't a very good steward at that time. I just had a lot of it, and that was nice, actually, but not to have to even think about it. But in the spiritual life, there's this whole thing in our culture about paying people who are doing spiritual work. I think it kind of harkens back to there's some things in the Bible about how's that go? The should belong to Caesar belongs to Caesar, what belong to God belong to God, or however that quote goes in the scriptures. And people feel that they really feel that if you're a serious spiritual person, many people feel that you should not charge for your work. They have had a lot of experience with, TV evangelists and people who've run into the courts for holding people up on money in spiritual areas and stuff. And so there's this whole thing about it. And so there's this tendency in doing this kind of work where there's many, many people that feel uncomfortable making their money that way. So it's quite a step for me and for anyone who wants to decide that their life purpose is to do spiritual work is to step into that arena, because you step in with all of those old ideas and you have to deal with all of that. So for me, I learned so much about it. I would say that it was not an easy thing to do. I went from being a very highly paid marketing consultant into being a counselor. And it was extremely nerve-wracking, I would say. I can remember just walking around every day. Wherever I put my foot, it was a practice I learned from Thich Nhat Hanh, the great Vietnamese monk, actually. I just put my foot down and say, I am here now, I'm okay now. And then my left foot down, I'm okay now, and I'm okay now, because it was so hair-raising to not know, where the mortgage was coming from and where anything was coming from. But there's an interesting dynamic that happens. One is that I reconsidered my living expenses in a really serious way, because I'd been pretty careless before that. So I pared down my living expenses. That was one thing I did, which I think was really good for me. And the other thing is that I started to understand the flow of money more carefully. So what I learned is that when you step into doing the kind of work that I do, the universe, or shall we say, or the energy of life, or however you want to phrase that, supports me. And so I many times, as an example, at the beginning, I would sign up to take a class and not have any money to do it. And I thought I would sit with my heart and I would say, am I to take this class? Is this the right thing? And I always get yes, yes, yes. So I'd sign up. I'd write the check. I'd come home. I'd look at my mailbox. And one time I remember I got a refund from Nordstrom's or something for the exact amount of money that I needed to take the class, which was just the very day I signed up for. Those things happened at the beginning to me quite a lot, which were very encouraging to me. Again, I was running on a pretty narrow edge there. But as things went on, I found that whatever I set my heart on, I pretty much could afford to do it. I even now can't even tell you where some of that money came from. I don't really know how that all ended up like that, but it just does. It just shows up and, you know, all of a sudden somebody makes a donation or I got some new work or something else happened. It's really an interesting process for me. And so, yes, I would say that I don't make nearly as much money as I did at the beginning, but, you know, my satisfaction with my life, shall we say, my satisfaction quotient is way high compared to where I was before.
Nice. Thanks for that rich answer. Last question on these big questions for you. How were your friends and your family? Did you encounter resistance from anyone when you were stepping in this direction that you're in now?
Oh, yes. Everybody, I would say. In fact, I don't think really that, well, my mom and my dad both died somewhere along the line here, although my mother was pretty supportive, my father not so much. So that was, I mean, I was sorry to lose them, and yet it was part of my journey. My both brothers, they pretty much were supportive, I would say. But I had friends. I don't really have friends now that I had before. I would say that. I only had one friend who really came out and really screamed at me about it. I mean, screamed at me about it and told me I was ruining my life and so on. And I also did get a divorce, which was not exactly related to it, but it certainly factored in that my husband was not real thrilled with my decreasing earning power. I would say, again, that it was a step, and I think that's something we maybe should say here, is that when you take a big step in your life and want to move into a new direction, you can't expect the whole gang to come with you. It isn't the way it works, you know. It's like, and there's those old mythological stories of people taking off on boats and so on, you know, and these great heroic journeys and so on. And the village does not come with you. You go alone. And so I think that's part of the spiritual path, is to be willing to go alone on some of these things. And on the other side, you find a new tribe of people who support you.
So can I ask you a lightning round of short yes or no answer questions?
Sure, you bet.
All right. Do you think that passion and purpose are the same things?
Yes.
Do you think everybody has a life purpose?
Yes. On
a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being high, how important is following your joy and igniting your life purpose?
I think it's a 12. That scale, I think it's not a 10, it's a 12.
This seems to be a common answer to this question. It's always above 10. Did you ever quit your job to follow your purpose? Do you think somebody needs to quit? We've kind of spoken about that.
I definitely did that. I don't know if I'd say somebody always needs to, but I definitely did, yes.
And what brings you great joy?
My son. And beauty. I get my joy from beauty and creativity.
If you unexpectedly amassed a good-sized fortune, what would you do differently with your life?
I would use it to reach more people. That's what I would do. Some of the things I'm doing. Mm-hmm.
So just in closing, thank you for such a rich conversation. It's always a delight to speak with you, and I always learn a lot, and I feel like you see me as being special, just as you said.
Yes, you are very special. Thank you so much. This was fun.
Just a couple closing questions for you. Do you have a personal growth recommendation for our listeners?
I would say the most important thing to do, especially if you're interested in your life purpose, is to consult that book I mentioned, but also to spend time with yourself and make a list of your talents and a list of the things that you love, and know that those are the ingredients of your future. I think it's as simple as that.
What's the best way for people to connect with you?
Well, my website, which is just fully getting prepped up and going right now, is www.theheartofteaching.com. Again, it's a website for spiritual teachers. That's where I can be found at the moment. But right behind it, I'm going to be starting online classes through a new program that is the Tree of Life Center Online.com. And so that will offer actual spiritual classwork online as well. So those websites are the places where you can email me.
Great. And what about Facebook? You talked about Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
Can anyone connect with you out there on Facebook?
Yeah, I love my Facebook. I'm right there. So if you're interested, you can find me on Facebook, Alice Bandy on Facebook. Yeah.
Well, what a delicious interview. Is there anything I didn't ask you that you'd like to talk about or mention today?
No, I think this was really useful and interesting. I think, life purpose is big, and I guess The only closing comment I would say is don't make it so big. You're already living your life purpose, and you're going to look back, and if you look back now, you'll see that the roads behind you led you here, and the road where you are today will lead you where you're going. And so I think it's something really to celebrate and not worry after, but just to let you be you and be the full power that you came here to be. It's a wonderful topic. I really appreciate having the opportunity to talk to you about it.
Thank you. You have been listening to Dr. Alice Bandy on the Life Purpose Advisor podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate this podcast or leave us a review on iTunes or a Stitcher Radio, wherever you're listening to us, and we'll see you next time.